My name is Noah. I work for a company called Colt. But before we go into our presentation, I'd like to thank everybody because yesterday Alex and myself were discussing the last slot, shopping district. Doors are open. So I just think you're already winning with the number of people here. So thank you to kick off.
And building on that as well, I basically summarised the whole presentation into a single slide. So if you do need to kind of dash towards the airport, this presentation really is how you combined traditional qualitative techniques, which is essentially old school telephone interviews, with some of the latest innovations in machine learning to help Colt customers improve their intelligent capabilities. And the net results of this was essentially a kind of record-breaking NPS score. The other thing about our presentation is there are some universal challenges, both from a kind of client perspective as well as an agency perspective, which I'm hoping would resonate with you guys. So from a client's perspective, how can you further unlock value from your existing NPS data? So the creator of NPS said, one of the most underutilized aspects of NPS data is all those open ends. And within that, the secrets to how people feel about your brand and your customer experience actually exist. The other thing is, how can you properly, and I say properly, interrogate a customer journey, looking to understand the good stuff about it, the bad stuff about it, but also working with customers to understand what is the best way to optimize that journey. And then lastly, from a client's perspective, is once you've gone out and done all that research, how can you then focus on the optimizations, we call them the CX upgrades, that are going to be delivering what we call true return on investment. And then from my perspective, is how do you understand very quickly a complex category as well as a brand new client to ensure that you then deliver against their many different types of research objectives. And last but not least, this is Qual 360, the idea about raising the value of qualitative research, not only raising it in the kind of context of working with a tech company, but also raising it in the kind of context of the wider industry. So these are all the different types of challenges that we've faced. And a little bit about Colt.
Yeah, so the thing about Colt is we are a technology company, and I'm one of those people who's kind of very defensive when we introduce ourselves, because half of the time I don't know what's going on in my business. I'm supposed to be the head of customer intelligence, but we move at such speed that by the time I've caught up, things have moved on, right? That's not a fact that people don't like to have conversations with me, it's just the reality of our business. Colt, as a business, is about providing high-speed bandwidth, network connectivity. That's what we do. So we plug different corporations across the planet together. So we are an infrastructure company for digital transformation. That's what we do. And I know there are some people who are into technology across the room. So our future, what we're chasing down is software-defined networks, which is about having a bit of software sitting on your network telling you when you need more or less. So that's the background. This is the organization I inhabit. A lot of the folks I work with are technical-minded engineers, software engineers, product engineers. That's the crowd I'm working to. My hinterland is qualitative, so it's not a natural mix, but we'll come to that later on. So the one thing that we want to do at Colt, and Alex briefly signaled to that, there are different organizations out there who've either done well out of the NPS regime or haven't done well out of the NPS regime, and the criticism or the affirmation comes on the back of that, right? I'd like to set out the stall by saying at Colt, we are, as far as NPS goes, at an industry-leading number. So we are at 64, which is a phenomenal number for our sector and the space in general. That said, we don't think that score in and of itself is a measure of how we want to become the most customer-oriented business in the industry. So there's a range of things that are going on. We want to be continuously progressive in terms of how we regard customer experience and the work we do in that space. And we are also open to having discussions about moving on from NPS. So what I wanted to signal is we're doing quite well out of the NPS regime, but we're also open to change. We are not bound to it. And that's the backdrop with which Alex and his team at North Star join us in our journey. This is a 15-month journey that we're talking about. So back to you, Alex.
And to further contextualize that result, so we talked about an NPS score of 64, and this within the kind of confines of Europe. The sector benchmark that Noah operates in is at 15, meaning that now he's 49 points ahead of his competitors. To further contextualize that result, you know, you're looking at some of the biggest and best brands out there. So Amazon, 62, Netflix, 68, Airbnb, a super impressive 74. So, we've talked about all these different types of challenges, and what we'll do in this presentation is take you through those challenges and how we overcame them. And we now know that we've got a record-breaking NPS score of 64. So how did we achieve this type of stuff? Well, we have to be bold with what we do. What you see in front of you now is the current programme of work, and it's a big programme of work that straddles all 4 quarters. Now, the thing is, if we were doing this presentation at the start of 2019, you will be looking at something fundamentally different. I mean, absolutely fundamentally different. It will be a number of telephone depth interviews. It will be an old school PowerPoint presentation, and also it will be feeding all that information into what we called an insight portal. So how do we get to that? Well, I'm going to focus on this word Gestalt, and I felt that's quite relevant, bearing in mind that we are operating in Germany, but it is the coming together of many different factors. Firstly, building a relationship which is at the foundations about trust, but also taking some risks. And the great thing about working with Noah and Colt is they enable a company like North Star to take some pretty big risks. It's about applying the what-if philosophy. We've heard an awful lot about design thinking, I'm not going to lie, but there are certain things which they do which are fantastic, which is using challenges as a way of innovating, challenging the status quo. It's about bringing together old and new. Old things such as old school telephone interviews with new school things such as machine learning, old stuff like PowerPoint presentations, bundled up in new stuff like insight portals. The role of the researcher, I think now more than ever, we're redefining what we do as a quali. A quali person isn't a guy who does some focus groups and some workshops. Yes, we do that, and then we report that stuff out. But at the same time, it's about working with programmers, building machines. It's about working with designers, graphic and web. It's about embedding yourself in the client's context as well. And the last thing, it's about endless ongoing upgrades. Just because you sold in a methodology doesn't mean it's the correct methodology, which sounds a little bit mad. We should always be looking to improve it. Where can you actually take it next? So, as I said, different types of challenges. We'll explore each challenge, unpack it, and then kind of talk about the net results of it. The big one I face from my perspective as an agency is how could you quickly understand a complex category and a new business? Now, as Noah signalled, this is an industry that is built by technology geeks, if you don't mind me saying that, which is consumed by technology geeks as well. And we started the process trying to understand this world, and we went online, and it is just full of this stuff, which is WANs, SANs, SDNs, ECs, OLs, the mind boggles. And this is the descriptive words to describe the process people go through to buy certain products from Colt. Obviously, as a quality researcher, I've got to take all this type of stuff and actually build it into a discussion guide that essentially does 2 different things. One, ask the right types of questions to the right types of people at exactly the right moments. But 2, critically, ensures it delivers against the research brief and therefore gives the insight that Colt needs to move their business forward. So, quite a big challenge. And we deployed this idea, but what if? What if you could quickly understand all the different types of challenges that consumers faced in their business, and bearing in mind there's 4 different areas as well: sales, delivery, network operations, and customer services. And you could quickly understand the positive stuff and the negative stuff. What if you could also, bear in mind you've just seen all the acronyms, understand what those acronyms mean and think about what these products and services mean to people. And at the same time, begin to understand the commentary from people themselves, the customers, in terms of how they feel those different departments really work and collaborate together. And you take all that information, and as I said, you're able to create what we call the perfect discussion guide. You know, ask the right types of questions at the right times, delivers the insight necessary for the research brief. And as I said, this is a story about trust. And we said to Noah, we are developing this brand new thing. It's about machine learning. We have absolutely no role for it right now, but how do you feel if we deploy this machine, which we call Cast, and the reason why I call it Cast is because it casts its eyes over billions of bits of information, but we're going to use this to kind of make sense of that complex world. And we asked them, we know for a fact that as a business, they do transactional surveys. So every single time that someone contacts their business, they get spat out a survey and ask them to kind of give it a score out of 10 and talk about effortless and things like that. 10,000 open ends. Somewhere in that stuff would lie the secrets of how people feel about the brand and what type of experiences they're going through. So what we did, we taught the machine the following. If you could take this information and break it down into the different areas of the business, and then thematically analyse the good things that people talked about and the bad things. But the deal clincher here is, I am a quali, and I need to be able to read this information in a way that makes sense to me. So what does that actually look like? We taught the machine to essentially bring data to life like this. So these are nice kind of like heat maps representing all the commentary around the world of network operations and all the negative things. And the brilliant thing from a kind of quality point of view is I could look at a clustering which was blue. The blue stuff links to a particular theme, such as communication. I could then zoom in with my mouse and then go into each one of those blue dots, and then it's beginning to cluster relevant commentary linked to the world of communication. And what that allows you to do is understand the nuances. I think too often people miss the nuances of the types of questions they're asking, but this type of tool allowed us to kind of unpack this stuff very quickly. And we did it for every part of their business, both the positive stuff and the negative stuff. And really, what you get from that is a discussion guide, as I said, which asks the right types of questions at the right times and ensures it gets the insight that you need. Next challenge, interrogating customer journeys. At North Star, we do a lot of customer journey work, and it's one of the most challenging things to do, to get customers to properly recall this information and document it in a kind of meaningful way. Keep in mind, we're working in a kind of complex category for a brand new client. What we then learned, another kind of layer of complexity, well, not everyone's journey is the same. So depending on whether you're buying a product or having something delivered, depending if you're picking up the phone and wanting customer services to solve a billing and invoicing problem, depending if your networks have gone down, these are all different types of journeys that people can go on. Another layer of complexities. In their world, there are different types of customers. There are 3 different types of customers out there. That's a complex journey to understand. That is a complex world to decode. And you would think we'd start using something like machine learning or deep process mining, but we didn't. This is where the old school come in. I still strongly believe speaking to consumers in clever ways, such as reverse linear storytelling, is the way to unpack what that customer journey is. Thinking about the good things about it, thinking about the bad things about it. And this is not a fast process. You can't do this within 1 or 2 days. We did this over a long period of time, and we did it on scale. This wasn't 1 interview, it was 30 interviews per wave. And if you think about that, what that allows you to do is accurately segment the market across the 3 different customer types, and also explore the different areas, the sales, the delivery, network operations, and so on and so forth. What do we get from this? More than what NPS would give you, which is, would you recommend this service to a friend? We got 75 unique attributes that define what that experience is all like in the world of coal. And then you're able to break that information down depending on where you're going in the business. So if you focus on the world of delivery, 27 things that define the journey within the world of delivery, of which 13 are good stuff, and then 14 not so good. Sales, 21. 11 positive, 10 negative. And already you can see the detailed information we're able to kind of give Colt in allowing them to understand the different types of customer journeys people go on within these different areas of the business. The next challenge. raising the value of qualitative research. I think something we should all be interested in because this is Qual 360. At this point, we had done a very impressive number of interviews, 30 interviews, each running around 30 to 40 minutes, speaking to their customers, using a variety of different techniques to kind of get the information you need. Now, from a qualitative point of view, that is quite a lot of interviews. Bearing in mind we weren't rushing this stuff as well. But keep in mind the context we're operating in. This is technology. We're talking about a company that deals in billions of bits of information. They're speaking to thousands, literally thousands of customers per day. In the EU, they're operating in every single member state as well. So already you've got big numbers which begin to make my 30 qualitative interviews feel pretty small and perhaps insignificant. The other thing that we always battle in our industry is the idea of subjectivity. You know, the way I analyse the findings and the results of my recommendations will be different from the way that you do it and your recommendations. And this is the kind of ongoing battle that we have. It's a big challenge indeed. We once again pose the question, what if the things that you're finding out, keep in mind it's the 75 different types of attributes, you're able to then apply a number to that. And what that does is begin to add scale and make sure that your results were completely unbiased. So we went back to the machine and we taught it some new things. And that is the beauty about machine learning. It never stops. You're always going back. And as a role of a researcher, you're educating it to make it better. We said, okay, in this world, in their business, there are these 75 different types of attributes out there. And they do break down differently across sales, delivery, customer services, and network operations. We go back to Colt and we ask, could we have some more of your transactional data? 10,000 responses once again. And what we wanted to do is our qualitative interviews were obviously running from 2019 to the midpoint, so when we asked for the data, we were hoping that the commentary in these surveys would match what we were finding out with their interviews, which they will. But the machine at this point is doing something quite different. And I want to make a very clear distinction between classic text analytics versus to what we're doing with Colt as well. Classic text analytics, it's not bespoke. Typically, these types of algorithms are focusing on simple keywords or phrases. What we're doing in this context is building and training a machine to understand one person's reality, their world. It's also using multiple different types of approaches. Topic discovery models, neural network embedding models. There are actually 5 different things it does to actually get to a very complex sentiment analysis, which essentially gives you this. On the left-hand side, and obviously this is not the final research findings, but if we think about the world of sales, what would a customer want in terms of Colt? I'm looking for something which is a fast response rate. I want staff to be competent communicators, and I appreciate this idea of a single point of contact as well. And what CAST allowed us to do was begin to add muscle, the big numbers that in a world of a tech company is really, really important. And we can then say it is reflective of what the wider customer database is saying. And the interesting thing as well is our findings completely remain true. Nothing changed the stories, but it gave Colt the confidence to go out and go, you know what, the things they found out in Colt, in terms of Qual, remains true, and therefore we should still move the business forward. Our next challenge and our final challenge, I think one of the biggest ones, which is how can you then focus on the upgrades that are going to be delivering what we call significant return on investment. And really this is the holy grail of what we do. We go out and we understand the brand and we think about the customer journeys that people go on, and we identify you've got these different types of attributes, 75 in total. And you know for a fact there are some which help amplify a brand equity but also detract away from it. And the logic would be that ultimately, if you're able to focus on the ones that amplify a brand, you're going to do the following thing, which is grow Colt's NPS. So where were we now? 60 interviews in, and that is a lot of interviews. part of our conversation had been speaking to consumers, looking to understand optimization. So how would you make this service better based upon the experiences that you just had? And we asked the question, could we actually turn these things into territories and begin to size the prize? So we taught the machine the following. So once again, these are our findings. It wasn't like bucket A, B, C, and D. We had to strip out the confidential stuff, but with each one of these themes, we told the machine, once we'd analysed those hundreds of different types of optimizations, us as researchers, once again, our role was to thematically analyse that stuff, which allowed us to create 4 distinct areas. In each one of those distinct areas, it is a combination of good things people were having, i.e. the attributes, but also the bad things. But the deal breaker here is each one of these buckets related to all 4 parts of the business. And what that allows you to do is begin to size the prize, which then helps Noah understand of these CX territories, which are the ones we should be further investing our time, effort and money to ensure that we build a customer experience that ultimately completely meets their needs. So we do have some key takeouts, some key learnings.
Right. I think, as Alex had the difficult task of kind of taking on this broad sweep of 15 months in a matter of minutes, I think I've got the easy task, which is just to tell you what actually netted out, where the net benefit was. I think one of the struggles we had at Colt, as I said, my crowd's technical engineering folks who like a bit of percentage signage, right? And one of the things that I had to do very quickly in my customer intelligence program was to build credibility of that program. And incorporating machine learning in the way we were looking at data helped us do that. That was the first one. The second was, obviously, as I said, we've benefited from the NPS regime. We continue to do that, open to change. But there's quite a lot of NPS data that was disregarded. So people were pivoting off the recommendation question and very little else, right? And I think this helped us unlock value in data that was being disregarded, which was a brilliant thing for us. And the third thing, which is where we're headed into now, is, you get into these kind of long programs of work and the business starts going to have a head scratch around, no, where are we going with all of this? You're doing all of these fancy moves, but help us decide, help us reduce the complexity and make decisions. So what I'm able to do now within my business is tell them that there are certain territories that we need to inhabit in terms of winning the customer experience or retaining the customer experience balance. So those are going to be our priorities. So mapping the territories and signaling to the business which battle we want to take on has been a huge achievement over the last 15 months. Back to you, Alex.
And from my perspective, it's about being bold with your approach. I kind of pains me slightly to say this, but we do need to be searching for ways to quantify a qual. There are lots of different tools out there that are free and easy and essentially quick and effective to set up to further validate your findings. It's not going to discredit what you've already found out. It's just going to give it the muscle and move that conversation away from the smaller number of interviews that you've done. And by the way, it's just your opinion as well. And lastly, the idea of ongoing upgrades as well. I think what we learn from design thinking in particular, it is an iterative process. When we do focus groups back 10 years ago, we said the discussion guide is an organic thing. You shouldn't be wedded to that. You should always be looking for ways to move it forwards. Thank you very much.
Which I wasn't expecting. So I'm curious, we spend a lot of work internally looking at CX metrics, and I think some NPS gets a bit of a rough ride as a metric in and of itself. So I'm curious if you can help me understand why you focused on NPS as a metric as opposed to other customer satisfaction metrics like CSAT or customer effort score. I'm curious just to understand how you would make the case for NPS in a world where sometimes people go NPS is bad and it's scary. And so how would you kind of fight the case for NPS?
That's a great question. First off, I don't fight the case for NPS, right? Because I've been in the last 10 years in a lot of industry forums where NPS gets a bad rap generally most of the time. I think the only thing going for NPS in large, complex organizations is it's very simple to understand, and often it's a system that you inherit, right? I'm yet to meet somebody who's gone into a client situation and said, woo, let's start NPS, right? They're generally inherited NPS, right? So they're inheriting decisions that have been made. And one of the things that happens as you give it a run rate of about 4 or 5 years, you start realizing there are certain shortcomings. And the shortcomings vary from customer to customer, context to context. My basic take on and the next 5 years, I see there'll be a lot of punditry around what's the counterpoint to NPS, right? My main pushback on all the existing forms of counterpoint to NPS is that they're still suffering from the fundamental problem that NPS is an attitudinal data. It's asking people what do they feel or think at a particular point in time with completely no regard for the actual behavior of that person, right? So in a business context, I think what will replace NPS will not be an attitudinal shout-out. And if people think that's the answer, it's not going to be that. I think you have to combine what people say with what your business metrics record. And once you recognize that, that'll... so again, in short, I'm not an advocate of NPS. It's an inherited system. We seek to improve it, but we've done fantastically out of the NPS regime. We're in a good place.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. I have actually 2 questions, and not to challenge what you're saying, but my question is, how accurate do you find machine learning in extracting insight and a scale? And the second question is, I understand you operate in 27 countries and languages. When you're reading data from different languages, how accurate is it, and what are some of the challenges you're facing? I guess how do you approach solving those challenges?
I'll let Alex answer that in detail, but just a quick correction. We operate in 131 markets, right, through 21 offices. So that's the scale. So we've got a bigger scale, so it's a bigger problem.
So 2 different questions in terms of, I guess, translating stuff as well. I mean, the beautiful thing about working in the world of technology, and I'll use the word Wi-Fi as a good example. Technology is created in an English language, and therefore it's then replicated across the world. So in terms of missing things when things get translated, it doesn't really concern us. In terms of the models, and I think this is where it goes back to the sentiment analysis, as I said, our machine is built to understand Colt's world. If it was an off-the-shelf, plug-in thing, it would miss the nuances. So we've taught it not only the language that consumers use in some of the kind of biggest markets, we've told it to also explore that in many different ways as well.
So we basically have departed from an English language perspective, identified the keywords that are specific for Colt, and then taught that to the machine for different languages.
Exactly, exactly.
Thank you.
No one else? If not, thank you very much.